it is amazing how consistent I am at failing to remember to record. I follow that practice routinely. So thank you, Sasha, for catching that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have a goodly set of tools for doing various things along the lines of interactive storytelling. And I thought it would be illuminating to consider the attributes of many different things and compare and contrast them and so forth. So what I'm going to do here is, let's get ready. Yes, that's ready there. I'm going to share my screen. Let's wait. Let's bring this out even wider. Okay. Now I'm going to share the screen, and we'll just do the whole desktop and bring this forward. Okay, so I selected this first question is this an appropriately representative group of tools for interactive storytelling? I think I got all the important ones. There are some others I know of, but they're minor. Does anybody want to point out anything I have left out? Major, okay, let's get Nicholas in.
Ink should probably be on there. I haven't used it myself, but a lot of interactive fiction is written in ink.
Oh, damn it. I forgot ink also.
And I guess choice script.
Well, is that really, I worried about that one quite a bit. Is that, can you call it interactive storytelling, or I'll take your word for it. Are you willing to declare choice script is a form of interactive storytelling?
Yeah, I think it can be as much as Twine can be.
Okay.
It's a Turing complete language, so you can do whatever.
Okay. Come on, Chris. Okay. Does anybody want to remove, I mean, I had real doubts about Squiffy and Quest because they're just for beginners and they're very simple. Does anybody want to nominate them for removal, or do you think it's appropriate to leave them in?
Might as well leave them in. I haven't used either of them.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how, where they're at on the spectrum.
Okay. Now, this first attribute is, I need to explain this. Typical is the crucial word here. Typical bit depth of variables in actual use. That is TADS, Inform, Twine, Ink, I believe, all use integers. They don't use floating point, do they? I couldn't find any reference to floating point variables in any of the things other than SWAT, encounter, and sweep weave. Does anybody, can anybody correct me on that?
This Inform uses floating point, or it can. It has support in the language, and some projects use it.
Okay. And here's where I bring in the loophole. Typical bit depth of variables in actual use. That is, from the way I also looked for each of these at an example script or whatever. And over again, what I saw was that about 90% of the variables are Booleans, and the other 10% are integers, typically 1 to 10 or 1 to 100. Come on, what's a free math, or that special form of math somebody cooked up that is in many ways a subset of the bounded number math I developed. Yeah.
I think you're referring to free math in choice script. Or
Okay.
fair math
Fair
is
math,
what it's
yeah.
called.
Fair math, yes, thank you. By the way, I'd like to point out, just all my forgetfulness, turns out that a medication I'm taking for blood pressure has a side effect, loss of some forms of memory. And so I'm going to be talking to my doctor about this week. So, because I really can't remember words. Anyway, so based on that, for example, I put Quest and Squiffy down to the 1-bit Boolean stuff, but because they're so simple, I believe that most people are going to be using them on a, at the Boolean level. And then as we work our way up, again, these two, TADS and Inform, appear to be roughly similar in their use of integers. But does anybody want to suggest that I move any of these things, such as choice script or inc, anywhere else on this scale?
I guess if we're talking about typical use, I might swap choice script and inform, because inform is like usually booleans and small ends like enums, like you said, and choice script, they're typically working with fair math, which is 7-bit depth.
Okay. And then inc is somewhere around here, isn't it?
I don't remember. I've never really used it.
Yeah,
I think that's correct.
I have never used any of these except my own, but I did go through their reference list of operators and read at least one script from each of these and just based it. And that, of course, can be very misleading because typically the script they show is a really simple, dumb one. But I actually played a couple of examples in both of them, and I could tell they're just the Boolean stuff dominates. So, okay, well, are we ready to move past this one, or is it close enough or good enough for our needs or interests?
I think the typical bit depth graph is good enough for now.
Okay. Okay, now let's move on to tool complexity. I mean, just there's a direct relationship. Tool complexity is directly correlated with tool power. The more power you put into something, the more difficult it is to understand. Actually, I spent most of my time worrying about the comparison between TADS and SWAT. And after a lot of fiddling around, I decided, well, TADS is more of a conventional computer language. And for that reason, it's complicated, whereas SWAT tends to be more visual in style. So I made it a little easier to use. I mean, these two down here, Squiffy and Quest, those are real easy to rate. But Sasha, my impression is that Sweepweave adds a number of capabilities not in the encounter editor. Is it appropriate to say Sweepweave is more powerful and more difficult than the encounter editor?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I thought you were building on top of the encounter editor. So
Most decidedly.
I have a big gap here, very deliberate, because It just seemed to me that the languages used in these four were really, oh wait, I've got to copy this stuff over. What did I just do? Undo that. Come on, Chris. There we go. What is wrong with you? Oh, it's just, oh, I know the problem. Okay. Shift, commit, wait.
I think I've actually used Twine before to make games, one of which I published as a game jam entry. And I think Twine is really easy to use by default. If you're just linking one node to another, just link, like you have a page and then you have a hyperlink that goes to another page. If that's all you're doing, then it's really easy to use. It is Turing complete. You can add, I think, arbitrary JavaScript to it. So you can use different variables that if you want to, but it has a nice learning curve where you can do simpler things with it to start off with, and then you can add, some simple variables to it, and then you can, if you know how to code, you can add your own functions and things like that. You can kind of build up in terms of how difficult it is to use.
Oh, so it really, so you're saying that it, hey, come on, yes, there. You're saying that Twine sort of spreads out across this whole region?
Yeah, I would place it maybe in the middle or maybe closer to the simple side of things.
Okay,
It's fairly easy to use, I think.
okay. What about ink and inform? Where should they go?
Choice
Oh, no,
script
not
was
inform. Sorry, not inform, idiot. Ink and choice script. There. So where should choice script go, Chris?
Yeah, I think definitely more along that end, the more difficult side, because it is, basically structured like a programming language. Like you can have syntax errors, and it has its own dedicated testing tools and things.
Okay.
And you need to provide your own ID or development environment to write it.
Okay. Well, I mean, is it just a text editor, or do you need something a little more snazzy?
It helps to have a editor which you can set up like variable highlighting and syntax, auto completion and things, but you can write it in text editor if you want to.
Okay. What about ink? Where should ink go?
I think ink is a little more difficult than Twine. I would place it around where choice script or inform is, I think.
Okay. Okay. Any other changes people want to make? I mean, I made a lot of guesswork coming up with these positions.
I think I would probably put TEDS and SWAT at least in the same place.
As the,
It's each other, yeah.
okay. Yeah. How's that?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Any other changes anybody like to suggest? Okay, let's move on then. Network bushiness. This is the notion that, some things tend to, the way people tend to use them tends to produce a tree almost always. And in many cases, the tree is sparse because the denser you make the tree, the harder it is to work with the story world. And I put SWAT way out by itself because it uses a directed graph, which I claim to be fundamentally to have a greater effective bushiness than an explicit tree. First, does anybody want to contest my assumption here that a directed graph has an intrinsically greater potential bushiness than an explicitly defined tree?
I guess it kind of depends what you're measuring with the graph, because like moving around the rooms in interactive fiction is a directed graph, but that doesn't have any bearing on the plot. It's mostly just moving between places and manipulating objects without real effect.
That was exactly the problem I struggled with. I mean, in any conventional adventure, you can spend a lot of time just going back and forth between rooms trying to figure out. And yeah, that's directed graph. But as you point out, that's not really the progress of the story through the story world. That's kind of like just sort of bouncing around sideways. And I just made a judgment call and said, no, I'm not going to count that. But you know, this is fuzzy decision making here. I do believe that for these other 6, 7, and let me copy these guys over. Choice script, there's ink. I do believe that sweep, weave, and TADs are definitely better on this than, say, in Encounter Editor or Squiffy or Quest. But again, that's a real soft judgment call. Does anybody want to suggest any arrangements? Chris, does choice script make it easy to have a lot of branching, a lot of bushiness?
Yeah, it does. And the developers really encourage authors to branch based on fair math rather than Booleans. And they also, I mean, they encourage foldback, but they also suggest in many cases to have like multiple branches, like based on different values in the same choice. So yeah, I might swap like, or put TADs over where choice script used to be, because it's basically, in terms of the world it implements, the same as Inform is. Like it's a more complex language, but it's basically the same as Inform in terms of the world.
Oh, yes, that's a good point. I noticed many similarities, but I wasn't willing to equate them based on my ignorance. So let me just make a suggestion here, though. Let me see if I can come up with an equation. Gee, we don't have capital pi, do we? I'll just say capital pi of, let's see, choices at each node. Capital pi is mathematical notation for the product of all of these things. So basically it's like saying, we go to the top of the tree and we say, all right, how many choices do you have? How many doors are there available at this? 3 doors. Okay, write down 3. Now let's go to each of those 3. This next one has 2 doors, so multiply 3 by 2. This one has 1 door, multiply that by 1. This one has 4 doors, multiply by 4, and you just keep going down the tree, multiplying. I mean, you're going to get a huge number, but we don't care about that. And you end up with a big number that I will say measures the net bushiness of the tree. Does that seem like a good specification?
I don't know. I think I might also multiply it by the number of outcomes at each choice, because
Oh,
yeah, like,
fallback.
yeah, well, it can be fallback, or it can be like if you compliment another character, they might react positively or negatively depending on their opinion of you. And
Oh.
the same action can have different results depending on the world state.
Yeah, you're right. As soon as we get, this only works with 1-bit trees.
Yeah.
As soon as we get into more than 1 bit, we get several issues that arise that mess it. So, oh well,
It would be hard to come up with an equation
yeah.
for that.
Yeah, so anything with math in it, I mean, with arithmetic calculations in it, would get us into much more complicated. But I'll bet somewhere there's a calculus solution, an integral that will do it for us. Any last changes on this then? Anybody want to move anything around?
Inform can be used to make directed graph-based conversations.
Oh, it
I-
can?
Yeah,
In-
I think that Alabaster was made in Inform. I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, it was. Yep.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, some of Emily Short's work uses Inform for
Yeah.
directed graph-based conversations.
Yeah,
Okay.
I expanded and released her conversation editor, which was based on the system used in Alabaster.
Cool.
okay, I'll move it up then. This is because of the sloppiness of the idea of bushiness. It is hard, pointless to quibble about exact positionings. This is not that useful an attribute. Okay, let's move on to some things that don't fall on any polarized scheme. Input system, I perceive only 3 basic input systems. The parser, which is pretty much the standard, text menu, and then an icon menu. Although SWAT can be used with a text menu also. But I don't know, this seems to be a fairly easy one to figure out. Does everybody agree with this one?
Twine is a text menu.
Oh, okay. Whoops. I forgot. Okay. I never saw that. Oh, well, okay.
Yeah, it's basically a tool to make hypertext.
Yeah, I saw that in one of the examples that yes, it just slipped right past me, so.
It basically helps you write really interactive HTML.
Yeah. Okay, network architecture. This one needs more precise definition, but the basic, I do see a fundamental difference between a conventional adventure. I mean, if we go to Colossal Cave, clearly the network is a spatial network. And that seems to be the implication for many others, but it's always possible. For example, or it is always possible to use a different type of network. Oh boy, let's assume we're always talking about trees. Clearly the trees in classic text adventures are spatial. Clearly the network architecture for SWAT, Encounter Editor, and Sweepweave is an event. But are there other things? Is this too brutal? Am I just cutting the pie into just two big slices? Or are there other ways to cut the pie?
There probably are other ways to cut the pie, but I think those are the two most common.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's say like Twine and the other choice-based systems are event-based, not spatial.
Oh, okay. Twine and which other one?
The choice-based ones like Choice Script or
Oh.
Ink, those are all event-based.
Which others?
Ink,
Oh, thanks. Ink. Do. Let's. Okay. That raises an interesting point. TADS and Inform are actually two of the older technologies. Do we see an evolutionary drift from the spatial to the event over the course of the last 40 years?
I think so.
I don't know. I mean, like choice-based kind of came out at the same time as parser-based. Like back in the 80s, you had some where you would input like a number, select from a menu of options, and some where you would type in as if you were interfacing with like DOS.
Yeah, you're right about that.
So I think it swings back and forth over the decades.
Okay. Do we want to say, well, eventually it's going to be event-based and the spatial is obsolete or whatever? Or do we think that this basic division is permanent?
I think so. I mean, I think each one has uses to create different experiences.
Okay. Yeah, see, I'm so closely tied to the event-based that, all of my prejudices are very much against the spatial. But if you think we can still do good work with the spatial, then, well, we'll see. Time will tell. Curious problem.
Indeed.
Any other thoughts or ideas about the network architecture way of, as an attribute of interactive storytelling technologies?
I think different authors gravitate towards different styles. Some gravitate towards the spatial style, some gravitate towards the event style. And I'm glad that both types of authors are around making work.
Well, here's a thought. Do the techie types, I mean, certainly in interactive fiction, we have techie types and more artsy types. Do we see the artsy types moving? Do we see more artsy types using the event system and more techie types using the spatial architecture? Is there a differentiation there of any significance?
Yeah, I think that might be true. Also, a lot of people who are writing spatial parser-based games have been doing it since the 90s in a lot of cases, and a lot of the people that are writing choice-based, event-based architecture are more newcomers in the last decade or two.
Yeah, yeah. And there's no question in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the newcomers are less techie and more artsy. Is that a fair characterization?
I think so.
I think so too.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to non-player agency. This is the question
If I
of,
can add something.
I'm sorry?
If I can add something.
Yeah, please, please.
I don't think that it's like only those types of people are like entering into this domain, but it's like it's opening up. So the ratio between the more technical people and more art people are just like being moved towards the art people.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I agree. We're seeing more of the art people. And unfortunately, they do seem to be, well, they start off with these really simple ones. And I think it's obviously good that they have these really simple ones to learn on. And the question is, will they graduate to, you know, the more powerful, difficult ones? Is squish, what do they say? I'm not, didn't they used to say that marijuana is an entry drug and it just gets people willing to use heroin and other hard drugs? Is Squiffy an entry tool that eventually gets you into the hard tools like TADS and ink?
I do think that a lot of people will move to the more powerful tools over time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there could be like a wall for majority of people, especially the art type people.
Yeah.
Judging, like looking based on the people that I know that try to do things that like aren't inherently like something that they gravitated towards in the beginning, and then it's like quite hard to show them, to convince them to use more powerful tools, especially the ones that require some sort of like programming skill or something like that.
Okay. I need to make a note here. I just figured out another attribute. Okay. Non-player agency. That's the degree to which characters in the story can actually take some initiative. And again, I'm a little worried about listing all of those 5 items as zero agency for the non-player characters.
Yeah,
But
I'd say choice script and ink tend to have little, just because they tend to, I mean, maybe even choice script a bit more than ink, but just like the developers tend to encourage authors to have multiple outcomes for choices. But one interesting one that I always think about for lots is Emily Short's old engine Versu from like 15 years ago.
Yeah,
It's too bad that it never really took off and like the public never got access to the tool. But that was something that seemed very similar to SWAT to me in terms of a whole lot big cast of characters moving around and trying to achieve their own independent goals.
okay. Any other, by the way, the fact that SWAT had lots of non-player agency, I think was one of the things that made it near impossible to use,
Yeah. Mhm.
because it required you to come up with all the algorithms, or with a basic algorithm that could be applied to every single character.
Mhm.
This algorithm must work for everybody. And so the verb that says eat the other person only applies to large monsters, but you still have to deal with everybody else with that algorithm. So
Plus, it meant that you couldn't really do much top-down control over the story. You just had to do bottom-up, directing every single character how they're going to act every single minute.
yeah, yeah. Any other suggestions on this?
I would place inform in the little category.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I think like inform typically is used to implement like traditional text adventures, and most characters in most of those stories are basically just lock and key puzzles.
I guess I'm biased by the types of works that I was writing
Mhm.
in inform myself.
Yeah.
That's
So what do you think? You guys want to duke it out or compromise or?
you could put it in between little and none.
Okay, we'll do that.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
There we go. We'll put it there.
Three categories is not very many bits worth of information.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. I had originally done this as a scale, but then I realized the way these things work, they tend to group. I mean, there's no question that the traditional text adventures have basically zero agency, and that SWAT has lots of agency. And then there's some things I could see that Encounter Editor and Sweep Weave both provide some degree of agency. So I decided to group it into three, but as always, this is a foggier problem. Okay, shall I move on?
Let's move on.
Okay, this one here, I really sweated a lot over this one. What is an appropriate typical verb count for the user? And the problem here is, how do you deal with first, how do you count verbs in a parser? Well, that sounds like it would be easy, but then again, are we sure? Well, yeah, we can assume that all of the verbs will eventually be used, but then we get the input system, the text menu input system. Do we count every menu item as a verb?
Yeah, exactly.
Each of those verbs is unique to one situation only.
Mhm.
So counting it as a verb seems unfair, or at least you can't really compare single-use verbs, as in text menus, with multi-use verbs, as in parsers.
Mhm.
It's not a fair comparison. So I never really, I decided that this really could not be done properly. Is that reasonable conclusion?
Yeah, I think the previous few categories kind of captures the distinction well enough.
Yeah. Okay, well, I just realized another, and what I'm going to do here is another attribute, and I'm going to stick it down here. There we go. This attribute I will simply call popularity, which is really just how many people are using this tool to build, or better yet, how many products have been built, how many story worlds have been built using this technology. And we can easily put SWAT somewhere over there. So 0, what do you think is the biggest one? Probably several thousand. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, at least.
How about if I do it this way? 10 to the 4. 10 to the 3, and so forth. We'll use a logarithmic scale. And okay, let's just spread them out. So here's our logarithmic scale. So yeah, SWAT is down here. Where do you think, where you want to place these guys?
I think Twine might be the highest, and then Inform, ChoiceScript, and Ink.
On itch.io, there are 4,939 games that are tagged as being made in Twine.
Okay. That
Yeah,
puts
there's
Twine right about there.
And there's a lot more that are not on Itch.
Right.
Okay, we'll move Twine up even further. Okay. Inform then moves up a bit. Ink moves up a bit. Where else do we, what else do we want? Surely TADS would be up here, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I guess there's a few hundred.
What about the others? Oh,
How many games are made in ChoiceScript?
I mean, published, I think there are at least 100 or 200 with choice of games, probably several hundred hosted games by now, and there's even more that are just like independently published or just freeware kinds of things. So yeah, I think I'd put it up around Inform.
oh, that would be several thousand games, story worlds. Is that right?
I guess maybe between Inform and Ink.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Inform has been around longer.
Mhm.
Something else to consider is how many games are published using a tool per year. Because Inform's been around a lot longer than, say, ChoiceScript or Ink. So there's people have had more time to make games using Inform.
I think this would be significant. Well, yeah, you're right. Let's finish this one and then do a rate version. So, encounter is Sweepweave about the same place as Encounter Editor?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
And-
think the only published game using Sweepweave is the one that Chris Conley, Mark Lauricini, and I made last year.
Yep.
Common Moonlight.
Okay, well, that puts it ahead of Encounter
In the Encounter Editor, there is that one test game that you wrote about going on a date.
Oh, yeah,
But
that's
I don't
right.
know if that counts as published or not. I guess it's technically on your website.
Yeah, okay, I'll put it up. It's a kind of sort of story world. Okay. You know, I'm gonna, because of this logarithmic scale, I'm gonna open up a little more space for us here, because clearly question squiffy are in the hundreds, not the tens. So
I don't think I've ever even heard of Squiffy.
pardon?
I don't think I've ever even heard of Squiffy.
It's a very introductory tool. I'd like to point out, though, I don't know. I know that on the Atari 800, there was a text adventure generation tool in 1979, because I used it.
Mhm.
It was done by, come on, the guy with a weird name, began with a Z. Very clever fellow, but he built a general purpose text adventure generation tool. And in 1979, there have been a lot of these. There was one in the early 90s, the guy tried to make it a platform that lots of people could use, a gateway or gate something. I mean, there have been a lot of these, but most have simply disappeared. So I just went through, I started by looking at recommendations for what are the 10 best tools for making interactive fiction. What are the 5 best tools? So forth. And Squiffy was on one of them. So does this look like, wait, let me edit this. Does this look close enough?
It's a good ballpark estimate. Yeah.
Okay, now let's do rate, which would reflect currency. That is, as Chris has pointed out, Inform has been around for a long time, and it may not be that much in use. So we'll say per year. I don't know. What do you think? Should we? We'll start at 10 to the 3. So what do we think here? Let's see. Counter editor, I'll move up a smidge, and sweep weave will probably go a little higher. What are the other? See, here's where Squiffy and Quest are probably really high, because they are fairly new and they're really easy, and so they're attracting lots of people to play with them.
I feel like Quest has been around like at least 15 years.
Oh, it has. I didn't know that.
Let me see.
Well, then that would push it down, wouldn't it?
I think
Let's put it down to 10. I don't know. That seems low, doesn't it? I'm just gonna randomly push this stuff around. Twine is still
Yeah, Quest has been around 10 years now.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to find when Twine was released. It was around in at least 2012, but I think it was a bit earlier than that.
I think so.
Chris, how many choice script products are coming out per year?
I guess again, it depends if it's officially published by the company or not. I mean, like if it's by
Pick the bigger number.
hosted, yeah, it'd probably be somewhere between 50 and 100.
Okay. Put it there. In fact, because it doesn't have to. There. Any other thoughts on moving these things around? Yeah, are there any of these that you think are just approaching that are obsolescent?
I feel like TEDs. I mean, it was big in the 90s, but Inform really won that war.
Yeah, I had the impression that Inform was ahead of TADS. In fact, when was TADS last updated?
I don't know.
I saw those numbers for some of the things. There was one of them that hadn't been updated for it was 2012,
Yeah,
the last update.
it looks like TEDs. The last stable release for TEDs was 2013.
2013. Yeah, that suggests that people aren't building much with it.
I think they just recently released a new update for Inform.
Yeah, they
Uh,
just made it
Yes, I saw that.
just a couple months ago.
So that certainly speaks well of Inform.
Yes.
Ink is about 5 years old now.
I think maybe slightly older than that. I mean, yeah, it looks like Inkle Writer's been around since 2012, so I'd say 10 years.
Wow.
I know even a bunch of these new choice-based systems are getting old at this point.
Should ink be pushed down a little?
Yeah, I think so. Like I'd say it's nowhere near as popular as Inform.
Yeah.
And I might even push choice script up a bit more to the space between them. Just because there's a bunch of user release things that are not official.
Okay. Let me make this. Oop, there you go. Okay, any other changes in this?
That looks pretty good.
You know, I just realized it's actually good that SWAT is in the negative territory because it's becoming harder to actually do it. The one or two things I ever built with it are more difficult to actually play with now. So they are, what is out there is disappearing and declining in number. So the annual rate is negative.
I think on the GitHub that Bill Maya and I released, you can still play some of the story worlds like
Oh, you can. Okay.
Yeah, I think you just have to download and basically compile the code yourself.
Okay, then. So, and golly gee, it's 9:59. Well, there we have some attributes. Anybody else want to suggest any other attributes that we could use to characterize the various tools out there?
You brought up an attribute earlier in terms of, or someone brought up an attribute, basically what kinds of people gravitate towards certain tools,
Yeah.
and kind of who the target audience is for a given tool. So it could be more techy, or it could be more artisty.
Okay.
It could be the target audience of a given tool. That's a bit hard to really judge, but
We'll make
something
this
worth considering.
artsy, and there's no 50 for this. And then over here is techie. And let's move our little, come on, Chris, get the right thing. There we go. Oh, wait, let's clear up more vertical space. There. Okay, where do we want to put these things?
It's a good question.
Well, I will claim, I'm going to put SWAT over here because I really went to enormous lengths to make things more visual, more or less, yeah, the algorithm stuff. But even then, the ideas of acceptable and desirable and so forth. Here, I'll put it there. Let's wait. I know. Wait, I've left out. Let's get ink back. And choice script. Choice script is pretty good on the artist, isn't it?
Yeah.
And definitely TADS belongs way up here, as does inform.
Yeah, I think that's about.
Like that.
I wouldn't say it's as techy as TED's, like the natural language, it tries to make it more accessible.
That's right, that's right. Let's see. Encounter editor. Well, it's definitely closer than SWAT was. And can we say how do we put sweep weave relative to encounter editor?
I think it's about the same as the encounter editor on this particular scale.
Yeah.
Okay. Twine?
Let's say one tick to the right.
Here?
I think Twine is pretty heavy towards the artsy side, personally, based on the games I've played that were made in Twine.
Okay.
They're kind of avant-garde, and they're a lot of fun. Ink, I think, is a little more to the techie side than Twine, but still pretty close to the artsy side.
Okay. There. But is it more artsy than sweep weave?
I think so, because sweep weave, you have to think about writing reaction scripts, and ink, you don't necessarily.
I don't know what to say about Squiffy and Quest. Just looking at them, because they're so simple, that suggests an artsy orientation. But at the same time, as I recall, they're still both basically text-based. I
haven't used either Squiffy or Quest.
Yeah,
I should go through and check some of these out so I have more experience with all of them.
Okay, how about if we leave all of these open? I will send this out to you guys as a file, and then if you wish, let's do a group edit on it. Let's do this through Thaddeus. If you want to make a change, just I'll set up a group on Thaddeus to discuss tool attribute or just tool attributes. And if you want to just make a comment, I think you should put ink a little further to the left in this diagram or whatever. So let me, any last changes here? Oh, we'll just do it through Thaddeus. So to be
Sounds good.
sure that I get this right, I'm going to export it as a PNG. And we can do better than that. There. And in fact, let me now stop the sharing and let's, where did that go? Yes, here it is. Can I just drag here? No. Gee. Oh, we've got somebody showing up at the an hour late. I thought I could send a file. In Zoom, but I don't see it.
Yeah, I think you have to open chat and there's a little paper icon at the bottom of the chat.
Yeah, I'm looking at that and that just pops up a pop-up menu saying Dropbox, Microsoft OneDrive, Google Drive Box, Microsoft SharePoint. Oh, your computer. Okay, so we want interactive storytelling, and there it is. It's a big file, so it'll take a minute. And while we are at it, okay, that went out. Here is a smaller file, just a screenshot from a story I saw today. This is something I'm an aficionado of news stories where the image they used is not quite appropriate to the headline. Has everybody gotten both images?
Yeah, I think so. I've gotten both images. California.
Oh,
Yeah, that news image is pretty silly compared to the headline.
I have a whole page on my website entitled "When Algorithms Go Bad." Google used to be really bad at this, had some hilarious mismatches. Anyway, we are way over time. Matthew, I'm sorry you arrived late. We started an hour ago, more than an hour ago. Oh, well, better luck next time. But I have recorded everything. And so, yes, you can definitely, you can see the video and sharpen your knife while you're doing it. So, okay, then. Well, thank you all, and I'll see you next month.
See you next month. Thank you.
Bye-bye.